morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, as so many of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. You can catch all our programs, 4,000 plus past broadcasts on our YouTube channel. There's so much to explore and discover with the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. But so many of you today are joining us on the Toronto Zoo's YouTube and Facebook channel, and welcome into all of you there as well. And that is because we are back live with our friends at, you guessed it, the Toronto Zoo. Now, we're the digital education partner for the zoo. We do a monthly program with them that has featured pretty much every story there is to feature at the zoo. It's been a wild few years, largely between Mary Ellen and I. So you're in for a treat if you've joined us before. My favorite educator in the whole world to work with. Don't tell the other educators. But today we are going to learn about a little bit about endangered species awareness. So as many of you know, there's a lot of species under threat on planet Earth, and places like the Toronto Zoo do such incredible work to mitigate that and make sure there's a future of abundance for wildlife everywhere. So we're going to meet some special animal ambassadors. We're going to learn about all sorts of cool stuff. And then most excitingly, we are going to take all your questions. Anything you want to know about endangered species, the zoo and beyond, we are going to do our very best to try and answer over the next 40 or so minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to zip it. Mary Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Jesse. I absolutely love your introduction. It gets better every time. I also agree. I think I'm a pretty good educator here, and I love, love, love doing these videos and getting to share my everyday life here at the Toronto Zoo and all the amazing work that we do here to protect our species in need across the planet. And I get to share that with all of you watching today and anyone who gets to watch a video in the future, which is just so fantastic to be able to see and be able to have this as a part of our job here. Before we get started about our species or endangered species awareness, Jesse's just going to bring up our land acknowledgement here for me. And so we would just like to acknowledge that the Toronto Zoo would like to acknowledge that the land that we are standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We would also like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. Thank you so much, Jesse. So as he kind of hinted at in our introduction, we are going to be learning about some endangered species. Now, if you weren't aware, the third Friday of every May is the International Endangered Species Awareness Day, and that's actually tomorrow. So we're celebrating a little bit early here, but that's okay. That just means there's more knowledge and more information that we can help spread and be aware of tomorrow on the actual day that we look to band together and all becomes guardians of the wild around us. Now, I've done a lot of programs with Jesse. We've covered a lot of different topics. And if you joined us before, you might remember, might know that I really enjoy asking questions to our audience. So I'm going to ask some questions right away. So get your hands ready on your keyboards. Jesse, are you ready for me here? I want to ask our audience here, what is an endangered species? Can anyone tell me what an endangered species is, or if they're vulnerable, if we're seeing them on the IUCN Red List? What does that mean for a species in need?
So we've got Mrs. Fisher's class joining us on StreamYard. Animals that there aren't a lot of is a very good answer from our class. If anyone else wants to chime in on YouTube or Facebook, that was actually a really great summation.
That was pretty much it. You kind of nailed it right on it there. Essentially, animals, or not even just animals, but plant species as well, a species that numbers are in decline. And there's different levels like vulnerable, near threatened, threatened, endangered, critically endangered, extinct in the wild, or extinct. And these are different tiers and levels that animals and plant species can be put into and ideally moved out of is the goal that we have to be able to rank how they're doing in the wild. And this is done by amazing teams of scientists all over the world and could be done by you someday as well. Now, why is this such a big deal? Why should we actually care? That's one of Jesse's and I's favorite questions. Why do we care about this? This is our whole job, is educating people on animals. But why does it actually matter? Why do we want high biodiversity in the world? Why do we want to care about the number, how many camels or red pandas are left in the world? Why does that matter to us?
So our first comment that came in from Ms. Grimm's class, and welcome in, guys, they just mentioned that their homes are being destroyed. So as species lose their habitat, just like if our home was destroyed, that would be very bad for us. If we take out a forest, the creatures that live in the forest have nowhere to live. It's, It's a deeply tragic thing. It's the cause of a lot of the endangered species on this planet. It's habitat loss. It's probably the biggest threat to them all. What else do we have coming in the chat? We need to save them so that they aren't extinct. We don't want to run them. We don't want to make sure they're not going extinct. Thanks, Miss Fisher. These are great answers.
Definitely.
And I would say animals just have inherent value. The world is so much richer and more wonderful when you go out and you're surrounded by birds and mammals and reptiles and insects. And that's why we strive to go to places with all those species around the world. Some of the most touristed places on this planet are places with the most incredible wildlife for good reason.
Exactly. Jesse, everyone here has nailed it right away. We use biodiversity. It's in every aspect of our life. The fact that we have food to eat, shampoo to wash our hair, wood to make houses out of, different jobs, and we have cars or buses to drive in, the beauties that we see all over the world, the airplanes that we take to fly places to see these beauties, they all come from having high biodiversity. So we take elements from nature and we use them in our everyday life as humans. And we need to protect that. We want to have it for future generations like the ones did before for us, and work together to be the guardians of the wild that we see around us. Now, I know that looking at me here, you're like, Mary Ellen, we came to see some animals. So I'm going to turn you around here and you're going to get a chance to be up close and personal with our ambassador for today. So we're going to go talk with the camels a little bit later on because they're one of the animals that are close to my heart and are also needing some assistance for their wild populations. And we'll talk about how endangered they are. But our first friend that we are going to look at here is Calden. And Calden is an endangered red panda. Now, our friend here with us, he has just woken up from a mid-morning snooze. And if you were unaware, red pandas love to be up in their little tree forts, up in the trees. And he was very lovely called down by his keeper for us so we could meet him. But it also means he's not quite awake yet. So we're going to let him snooze up here with us. But hopefully, if Calden wants, we do have some fun games and puzzles and toys with snacks here on the ground for him. And maybe we'll put one up for him as well, make it a little easier for him since he's being such a good ambassador for us. But we're going to learn a little bit about Calden here and why red pandas are endangered, what's going on, and also the ways that you can help them. There we go. He's getting breakfast in bed this morning. What a lucky little boy there. That's the most important thing. You know, that's why Jesse and I have our jobs here, and we want to inspire you as the next generation of wildlife guardians to be able to feel like when you walk away from these programs, I know we sometimes touch on some doom and gloom out there, but I want you to walk away with hope and inspiration that together we can make a difference in the world. So as mentioned, this is Calden. He is a 12-year-old red panda. If you come to the Toronto Zoo, you might see him or also his exhibit mate, Poppy. Poppy was born in 2024, so she's quite a bit younger and is a little bit more feistier with some energy. Calden here is a little bit more low-key, more chill vibes for us, which works out well for a virtual broadcast for us. But raccoon, or no, I almost gave away the answer there. That's a hint for everyone there. Red pandas play a really important, viable role in their habitat. Now, does anyone want to guess why we should care about red pandas in their habitat? What is it that makes them so special? Why do we need to have them around? What's their role? What do we think it is?
Ooh, very interesting. And I think that we all missed that reference to who they might be related to together. I think all our ears were plugged at that exact secondary element. You're good. But why are red pandas important? And by the way, I just want to stress as our red pandas eating here that several of the most incredible live animal interactions with an animal this close have been our red pandas. So the zoo red pandas are like the all-time exploring by the seat of your pants stars, which I think is just spectacular. So we've got, again, they may be our keystone species in the ecosystem for one of our groups. That's fantastic. Maybe we could explore what a keystone species is in just a minute. We've got that they keep the forest alive, or they, however you want to take that, Mary Ellen, helping keep our forest. That could be a keystone species reference again. Again, they're just cute and cuddly in and of themselves. Always a good answer. Every animal, again, has inherent value, and I think that's so important. These are good places to start. So maybe they're a special species. Maybe they just deserve to be saved because they're so amazing. What's the deal, Mary Ellen?
100%. We're right on it there. So they're not quite necessarily considered a true keystone species, and we can definitely talk about what that is. But you're really close with it. They're considered an umbrella species. So an umbrella species, think about, you're outside in the rain, and you don't want to get rained on anymore. So you pop open an umbrella and suddenly there's this very large kind of cover that you can be underneath. And it not only helps you, but maybe you have a friend walking with you and your umbrella is big enough and your friend can join, and then another one and another one. And you're all huddled together underneath your umbrella, protected from the rain. That's what species like red pandas do. They act as more of an ambassador in their habitat. So kind of goes with the cute and cuddly thing here. If you look at ambassador and umbrella species across the globe, you're going to notice a common theme that they're very cute, very cuddly, very marketable animals. And these are the animals that public and people around the world will care about a little bit more. It's hard and it can be overwhelming when we say so many species, hundreds, thousands, millions of species out there need our help. That can seem like too much sometimes. And it gets a little bit difficult to narrow it down on your own and feel like you're doing the right thing for those species and those habitats out there. But instead, if we said, hey, I want you to care about the red pandas. Look how cute and cuddly they are. They climb trees, they eat bamboo. If you help them by conserving bamboo forests, you help the red pandas, and you can walk away feeling really good about that interaction. And the nice thing is if we help red pandas, we help the snow leopards and the jackals who hunt red pandas. We help the bird species who live in the same trees as the red pandas. We help the bugs and insects who live underneath the root system of the trees of the red pandas. So by helping just one animal like a red panda, you're actually helping every other species in their habitat with them, which makes it much more easy for us as a general population and public to kind of understand what's going on and the interaction that we're having with them. But also, again, it goes back to so nicely being able to protect a much larger habitat by just doing one simple thing. Now, that's all great. We want to protect them, but how do we actually know what species need protecting? Like, I don't know off the top of my head right now if the camels out there in the wild, like I know that they do need it, but who's telling me that information? How are we getting that information about the animals? Does anyone want to guess what kind of jobs there are out there or different ways? Do we walk up to them and say, hey, do you need help? What are the ways that we interact with the animals in the wild?
I tried that with a moose once, and the moose was very displeased. So try not to do that if you're in Newfoundland or elsewhere. But no, let's see what we've got from our audience. Now, we covered this question a lot. We actually did a big series of the World Wildlife Fund not too long ago, the Canadian Wildlife Federation, and this question came up a lot in both. And so, yes, it's just taking an assessment of the species, trying to figure it out, whether that's pictures, whether that's camera traps, whether that's people surveying from the air. If you have a big animal that's out somewhere in the water, like the first thing that we need to do is count. And so people that do that are biologists, they're environmental scientists. They often work with parks programs. We're doing a big Parks Canada series right now, and a lot of their work is around that. So counting is actually the essence of a lot of science, and that is true of conservation as well. Great answer, guys.
100%. Exactly. It seems like such a simple answer, and just saying you just need to count how many there are. Some animals are a little bit more elusive than others. We've talked about snow leopards on this channel. They're considered a ghost cat. They're very hard to find and figure out how many of them there are. Also, no offense to Keldon here, when compared to Poppy, we definitely can tell them apart. The keepers can see their personalities. They do have slightly different faces, different coloration of red. But I bet you that there's probably another red panda out there that looks exactly like Keldon. And so on a camera trap, it might be sometimes hard, or just with your own eyes, to be able to tell the difference between all of them. But if we can find unique markings on them or something special about them that helps us, and we can capture it night after night in the same location with a camera trap, then that can really help us determine how many are there in the wild. Now, there's a couple other ways that we can do it as well, and it might give a hint here, but look how fluffy and furry Keldon is all over his back. And something we can actually do is we can get DNA from a lot of the hair samples and fur samples of our larger mammal species. So scientists can set out little wires with small amounts of like a twisted wire on it. It doesn't hurt the animal, but when they pass over it or rub up on it to maybe get an itch or a scratch on their back, they're able to pull out a little bit of hair, and that can tell us who that animal is and also who they're related to. Now, I'll give one more quick question to the group here. We've talked about this a lot on the channel, but there's another bodily function that the animals give up on their own. We don't have to go in and take it from them. It's readily available, usually on the ground. What else can we get from an animal that tells us about their health, about their genetics?
I mean, we've covered this a bunch. I know it's our kids' favorite thing to talk about. And the answer is poop. Yes, all the poo from animals. It's like the gold standard of biologists. In fact, it's half of what being a biologist is all about is poo. So tell us a little more about it.
And that's the best thing is in science, it actually tells us so much about the animals. As I mentioned, it can tell us things about their general health. It can tell us their DNA. It can tell us about their hormone cycles, which is incredibly important for female red pandas or just female species that are in breeding programs. We need to be able to tell when they are ovulating or when they are able to be impregnated or have interactions with a male of their species as well. So a lot of critical information comes from fecal samples or scat samples that we can access from animals in captivity like Caldon, and we can compare them to wild ones and look at different kind of comparing between them. And then also, if you find multiple scat samples out in the wild, you're probably under the impression that you have multiple of that species living there as well, in case you don't happen to see them all in the same room at the same time, which would probably never happen to these guys here. Now, one of the great things, I sort of mentioned it, is we can do breeding programs with them. So not only do we educate about our endangered species here, but we can have breeding programs for them. Now, some of them are more successful than others. And I will say that red pandas are maybe one of the lesser successful ones. They have a lot of challenges, or maybe not challenges, but conditions that need to be exactly perfect before they will successfully reproduce. And one of their harder things that they have is they have a very short window of a breeding period. So they can only actually get pregnant for about 36 hours at a time, which is really, really a tight window there for them to interact with the male, like the male, and then be able to have successful breeding in that time. It's a lot of pressure for them. So that can be a little bit more challenging. And then also just based on their genetics as well, and how successful the breeding time was with a male or another individual of their species, it can make so many different factors in determining if there's going to be a healthy or viable offspring at the end of that time as well, in the end of their pregnancy. So it can be a little hard for them. But the good news is that in captivity here, at the zoo, we work with our keepers, we work with our reproductive health specialists, we work with our nutritional team, our vet team, and it's a whole process between all of them monitoring the animals, adjusting diets, adjusting conditions in their day, monitoring their fecal and urine samples and blood samples, and making sure we have everything as perfect as we can for them to be able to have a successful reproduction, which is always the end goal for us here as well. Now, one of the other things as well that we can talk about for red pandas, our buddy here, I'm going to kind of move here for a second. He's decided to go in for a little bit more of a cat nap. There we go. Hi, buddy. He's like, you guys woke me back up. He's very nice and curled up with his tail there, getting ready for maybe an afternoon snooze after he had his little snack there for us, which is great. But one thing I want to touch on before we leave our red pandas here is what you can do to actually help as well. So I told you a little bit about what the zoo's doing here, but the purpose of Endangered Species Day is to make sure that we can all get involved and be involved in a positive, impactful way. Does anyone know of any ways that we can help out as just citizens of the world, just people living our lives every day? Let's hear some suggestions.
Mary Ellen, we've got such an in-depth audience on our Facebook and YouTube chats. They're already talking about like specific bills in Ontario Parliament to go in for or against. So way to go, you guys as an audience. One of the things that we covered in a lot of our zoo programs is just reducing the waste you create in the world. And we have that coming in the chat as well. So if you're a student, you want to pack a litterless lunch. If you want to use reusable bags, reusable coffee mugs, water glasses, all that actually does make a positive difference. Choose sustainable seafood. If you're eating out, you can look for that in Canada. We have Ocean Wise as a little symbol, which sort of means that the research has been done for you, which is really great. Charlotte in Miss Grimm's class has to recycle. So if we're going to waste things, make sure they get put back in a place where they can come back into the cycle again and we can use them in the future. Aluminum cans are really good for this. So you guys are doing a fantastic job. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So anything to help fight climate change. We're killing it, Mary Ellen. I love it.
Oh, that's amazing. Those are fantastic. And I really love, Jesse, you touched on this, such a range of options and suggestions. And that's the most important thing. It's whatever you can do in the moment currently. And anything big or small can have a net positive impact on the world around us. So when we're younger and we're starting out, we are just learning about all of these things. Oh, we are getting very comfy. We're just learning about all of these different things happening in the world around us. So it's okay to do small steps, the litterless lunches, turning off lights, conserving energy, and spreading awareness. So now you are aware, if you weren't before, that tomorrow is Endangered Species Awareness Day. So maybe tomorrow, if you have a chance, maybe start Googling some of the endangered species native to where you live as well. Here at the Toronto Zoo, we work really hard with our Blandings turtles, which is a native species here in Ontario. It's the turtle with a bright yellow chin. And we do a lot of work with them of conservation because they're local to our community here. And that's the best thing to do as well. I know I'm showing you a red panda, but you're probably not going to see one in your backyard. What you are going to see is a lot of other native frogs, insects, bees, birds, species who do still need your help. And so being able to look a little bit more into their conservation, making sure your backyard, their backyard is as clean as possible, picking up litter when it's safe and we see it on the ground. Those are fantastic ways that every single day we can make a difference. And then we also got some bills and governmental things as well. That's definitely huge. If you have the ability and the capacity to be able to look more into government decisions, get involved with local governments and start petitions and help support different programs that are running, that are trying to protect these bills and these laws that help protect our endangered species. If you're able to get involved with that, then that's fantastic as well. And we love to see everyone doing anything that they possibly can. Nothing too big or too small to be able to get involved with our endangered species and make a difference in their life and in ours as well. Now, Calden looks positively pooped. I think this is his first camera appearance with us. Jesse, you're right. We've done several with the red pandas before, but this is Calden's first promo here with us. So he looks exhausted right now and ready for a nap. So what we might do is say goodbye to Calden, but if you have any questions about him, I'll still take them later. I'm going to actually throw it back to Jesse for about 35 seconds while I make a run to our secondary species we're going to be learning about today.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much, Mary Ellen. And we'll be timing you very assiduously for those 35 seconds on the dot. You guys are an amazing audience. Please do keep sharing questions in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be able to pass those along to Mary Ellen in just a minute. Mrs. Fisher's class, our live group, will be coming to you, of course, several times. But such nice things coming in our chat. People that have joined the zoo for the first time, become members this year. Like, I grew up in Toronto too. I'm in Newfoundland now, but as a boy, the zoo was like my home away from home, even though it was 2.5 hours by transit from where I was in North Etobicoke. It's such a special place. It changed my life. It was my first volunteer experience as well. And honestly, if you get the chance to visit in person, it's just an incredible, incredible opportunity. I've also let me put this up in our chat as a banner as well. We talked about Guardians of Wild earlier in the broadcast. I really encourage you, if you haven't checked out the zoo's Wildlife Conservancy page and their Guardians of Wild campaign, there's so much to explore and discover there on some of the coolest species on planet Earth. The zoo does such a great job with their conservation work. And as we open the broadcast with, in our 35 plus broadcasts from the past, everything is on our YouTube channel. So if you type in Toronto Zoo on that YouTube channel, you'll find everything from Komodo dragons to elephants to rhinos to all sorts of neat stuff. We also have some really good cahoots with them as well. So please do check it out. We're almost at our next ambassador species. I think we're at second 23. Mary Ellen, you're doing a great job running between things. But please do feel free to start sharing your questions now. And then the zoo team is always happy to take extra questions after the broadcast. If you registered on the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants side, email them to us. We'd love to hear back more and pass them along to Mary Ellen and their amazing team there. So thank you guys so much for your enthusiasm and energy and everything. And I think we are walking up to our enclosure. So I'm going to bring back Mary Ellen in and see if we are at species number 2. Hello. Oh,
All right, everyone, we
We're
have
good.
made the short runner sprint over here to our Bactrian camels. They also live in the Eurasia section of the Toronto Zoo. So it wasn't too far for us to go there. I appreciate the brief intermission though for there. That was fantastic. Lots.
We've cut out a little, Mary Ellen. Maybe the camels are blocking the internet with their giant humps. Let's see.
Oh, no.
I think we're a little good. Let's try it. And worst case scenario, if we have to run back, we will. But we'll talk about the camels a little bit, and I'll pop in if anything goes awry.
Okay, sounds good. I will stay. They are taking a little afternoon snooze as well. It is a beautiful day here in Toronto right now. We've had a couple rainy days the last little while, and I think all of the animals are just absolutely loving the fact that they are getting to soak up the sun. Now, I just wanted to use the camels briefly as a sort of secondary animal for us to chat about. Another species that we can talk about for being endangered, because they're kind of in an interesting boat. So these are two-humped camels. So they are Bactrian camels. There also is a type of camel called a dromedary camel that only has one hump. We do not have them here at the zoo, though. We only have our two-humped friends here. So they are a little bit, they're a little bit bigger overall. And then they have the two humps. That's their kind of biggest point for them. I do see a little notification at the top of my screen here. I'm going to try moving around and seeing if that helps to be able to increase my service a little bit with them here. But camels are in a really interesting spot because there is a big divide between domesticated camels, which means humans have them more in captivity and we breed them in captivity, and they're more like a dog or a cat that you'd have at home, or like our cows that we have on farms, and wild Bactrian camels. And the difference is how many of them are left. Sadly, there are only about 950. It's less than 1,000 wild Bactrian camels, while there are thousands of domesticated ones. And they're actually now so far kind of separated genetically that they're not quite different species, but they do act as they're kind of like genetically not the same animal exactly anymore, just because of how much they have been breeding separately from each other for so long. It's made them become very different species altogether, which does not help their wild counterfronts. And now to the point even where they are sometimes getting interaction with each other in the wild from humans, and then from domesticated versus wild. They can now transmit diseases from each other, which is not good for either of them. And as well, people will sometimes push the wild ones out to make room for the domesticated ones because they are able to farm with them. So they can have wool and clothing made from their fur, and then also milk from them as well. So there's different benefits for each for human needs in life. But unfortunately, we are pushing out the wild camels to be able to utilize the domesticated ones a little bit more. But they are kind of the same boat as our red pandas by talking about it more, by involving local communities in those areas, and looking at the bigger environmental issue. So why is it that we have to rely so heavily on species? Is there a way to hybrid them back together, to have people and animals coexist in nature harmoniously? And looking, not just telling people who live in those habitats in those areas as well of the world that they have to do it just for the animal, but figuring out why it is that there is a bigger issue going on that needs to be solved and needs to be fixed in order for them to have a harmonious lifestyle with that creature as well. Now, I think our camels here, we do have a second paddock of camels, Jesse. How is my service doing here?
You've gotten a lot better. I think the camels have stopped blocking the internet. They're doing pretty well.
Good, I'm glad. Now, I'm happy to jump into some questions for everyone here, but what I might do is, this is our kind of like hanging out camel paddock. We do also have like a different herd of camels that we can go and see if maybe they are up and active and a little bit less sleepy for us. So maybe I'll start my move down the road, but if we want to start and jump into questions, we can do that now.
Amazing. Well, we'll start with our Mrs. Fisher's class. Carsonville, if you guys want to kick us off with our first query, great. And then our YouTubers and Facebook crew, you guys can share some questions in the chat as well. But hello, Mrs. Fisher's class. Hi.
What is the most endangered animal?
Ooh, the most endangered animal.
The most endangered animal in the world. Okay, there's definitely a lot of them out there, which is kind of sad to say as the answer. For Bactrian camels, there's only 950 of them left in the world. Now, Jesse, you might have to fact check me on this one. Sometimes Jesse and I do consult our good friend Google in a pinch or a notice. But white rhinos. Now, remind me, Jesse, we have white rhinos here at the zoo. And I'm going to be honest, I always forget if we have northern or southern white rhinos. And one of them, there's only 2 females left.
Yeah, so we have southern white rhinos at the zoo, and there's quite a few of them left, but northern white rhinos, there are literally only 2 left. We actually regularly do broadcasts with the amazing folks at Old Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya that literally keep those last 2 rhinos alive. So we will sadly lose the northern white rhino. That is a species that is on track for extinction, needless to say, with the 2 left that are both female, but that would probably be your most endangered species left on Earth. And again, we lose species that we don't even know we're losing. Like we come across species that we find the last of or the last few of, and then they go extinct. So it really is a bit of a crisis in the world of biodiversity. Every scientist in conservation will tell you this. And it's sad that we have to think that way. But again, it underscores why it's so important. We have people like the Toronto Zoo team working to save these species. That's a great first question. All right. It looks like we got a lot of geese sounds coming from our Toronto Zoo.
We do indeed. They are absolutely everywhere at this time of year. And in fact, there is one who is standing over there yelling out into the wilderness.
Very nice. As Canada geese do. They actually
as they do.
Yeah. Mary Ellen, we've got a question from one of our chats about if there's a best way a classroom can help protect species. And I know there's a big question. You want to share?
Definitely. So I love that. And it's based a little bit on where you are in the world. And also where your school is located. Are you more rural or maybe more city-based? Some of the best ways you can do, though, if you're able to, if you don't already have a green team at your school or an eco club, you could start one of those. If you are able to, you could do cell phone recycling programs. You can also get involved with styrofoam recycling here in at least kind of this area of Durham and Toronto in Ontario. You have to drive up to a specialty recycling plant to recycle styrofoam products in Markham. So you could maybe do a collection and have volunteers run recycling up to the proper places to have it put back or taken care of so they don't end up in the environment and animals eat them. You can do cleanups of your outdoor spaces at your school. And if you're able to, and there's, you have teachers and supports and everyone who can kind of work together with you, maybe you could write a letter or something like that to some officials in your area, inquiring about conservation actions of any local species that you have that might need some assistance. So there's a huge range depending on your capacity and what you're able to take on. And you can start small and always build to it as you go.
Fantastic. Thanks for that tangible advice, Mary Ellen. It's always nice to give classes a place to go and they want to do something great for the environment. Speaking of classes, we're going to head back to Mrs. Fisher's class live as you're right at the camera, and I love the energy. YouTubers, Facebook audience, if you guys have extra questions, please do share, but come on back in Carsonville. Hey!
How many red pandas are left?
How many red pandas are left, Mary Ellen?
Great question. So in the wild, we think there's around, sorry, I'm going to pass by all the geese here really quickly to try and get to the other side of them. There's about 10,000 or so left in the wild right now, which I know sounds like a really big number because anything over 100 is kind of a big number. But their numbers have been declining very steadily for many years. So 10,000 is actually quite small. It's about a 50% drop since 1997 or so. So they've gone down significantly in their numbers in only about, this is going to age me, only in about 25 or so years.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at the lack of species. I'm laughing at the 25-year thing. We had a question about where they live, and you might have talked about this at the beginning, but where can we find red pandas in the wild?
Yeah, for sure. So they live, it's kind of like we have them in the Eurasia section of the zoo. So think different sections of Europe and Asia in the kind of bamboo forest. So similar habitats to like giant pandas, like adjacent to that, also to snow leopards, and sort of in a similar range to our camels as well.
Yeah, Fantastic. It's one of the most special ecosystems on this planet. Some of the people that have explored most of the world haven't been in the red panda forest because it's just sort of a unique, special place. So if you get a chance in your life to head to that Nepalese Chinese forest, we've actually done some cool stuff with the Red Panda Network before, which helps save red pandas in the wild. They're a very special organization as well. So lots to explore there if you're keen. Again, on our YouTube channel is a good place to start. Mrs. Fisher's class, I'm going to come back to you for one more, and then we'll take maybe one more from our YouTuber before we wrap up. But this has been a great Q&A, guys. Carsonville, come on in. Hey.
Why do camels have lumps on their backs?
Ooh,
Oh,
what's the hump all about?
yeah. What's the hump on their back? That's a great question. So this is actually one of the reasons why I love camels. Jesse and I have done a few programs on them before. They are one of my favorite animals just because of how good they are at surviving. And those humps on their back help them in that survival. So a lot of people a long time ago, I feel like we're getting better at this kind of false narrative, but it's not actually water in their hump, it's fat in their hump. So they have a fat reserve, and they do build that reserve by eating and drinking throughout their normal day. But they're able to store it up in their humps. And then when they go through periods of drought or food insecurity, their body is so good at metabolizing and breaking down and redigesting that fat storage into energy for them so that they're able to keep going, find new food and water sources, and then continue to function. And they build back up their fat reserve when they have periods where they have excess or plentiful resources again, which is really cool.
Very, very cool. I actually, over the winter, developed a similar sort of hump thing around my midsection with all the cookies I ate, and that kept me alive through the coldest months. So I understand the camel's perspective. Mary Ellen, before we wrap up and say farewell, is there any final message you want to leave us with about endangered species awareness, our camels, our red pandas, anything before we say goodbye?
Definitely. I'm just going to turn the camera around so it comes back on me here really quickly. But I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on today's broadcast. I hope you enjoyed meeting our red pandas and our camels. I know they were a little bit less excited for us than Calvin was today, but if you want to see the camels up close, Jesse and I do have lots of videos. I believe our last June or last May video, we did one on feet and we focused on camels. They're very cool. So we have lots of videos for you to see them up close. If you're in the area and around the Toronto Zoo, I welcome you to come and explore the rest of our facility, being able to see all these incredible species up close. And tomorrow, I encourage everyone to take a moment and look up an endangered species that lives local to you and see if there's anything that you can do to help them or make a pledge for wildlife to be a future guardian for wild with us here at the Toronto Zoo and Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants.
No better message than that. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. We're going to bring in Mrs. Fisher's class to say a big thank you and farewell in a second. But if you're at home on YouTube and Facebook, you want to yell out in your office or classroom, you have our permission to annoy the principal and or your coworkers. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much, Mrs. Fisher's class. And have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Bye for now.